Mind-muscle connection. Now, we've all heard this term many times, and for most of my lifting years, which have been 20 or so, I thought I had a pretty good understanding of what it meant. Until about 3 years ago when I actually figured out what it meant. So this is an important subject to discuss as pertains to Nether by the Day or any bodybuilding program. And I do mean specifically bodybuilding, not powerlifting, not strength building, not weightlifting, not Olympic lifting, not strongman. This is specific only to bodybuilding. Let me give you a little example of something, okay? A few days ago, one of the Nether by the Day workouts, I was laying on the floor doing some sort of like a guillotine press with the barbell, but the range of motion was very short. I lowered the bar down and then just moved it like an inch or two over and over. People were asking me what I was doing. Good questions, valid question. What I was doing is I was pushing inward on the bar, like trying to push my hands together. So even though the weight on the bar was pretty light, I was pushing in really hard with my chest, and then just moving it through the range of motion where I felt the most pressure on the pecs, okay? So it was way the hell harder than it looked. It looked goofy, it looked silly, it looked like just light weights that somebody's barely moving, but it's what you can't see. The pain in my chest, the burn, the tension, the inward contraction, it's all the things you can't see going on that are significant in that clip, okay? And this is just one of countless examples of how this plays out. And you guys are going to see a lot more of that. With Nether by the Day, sometimes you're going to see me lifting a weight and you're going to think that just seems too light. I can't believe that he's, that he calls a guy that big and that strong could call that bodybuilding with a weight that light. Well, rest assured there will be something about what I'm doing that you're not seeing that's making it a lot harder than it looks. So mind-muscle connection, about 3 years ago, maybe more now, I think it was Lee Priest. I was listening to him describing a lot of things about bodybuilding because he's a bodybuilder I really respect, and I enjoy listening to videos and interviews with him and stuff, and something clicked within me. It's like I visualized it really, how significant it is for the first time that when a bodybuilder does a set of the same exact exercise as, say, a power lifter next to him, what the two of them are doing is completely different. The power lifter is looking for the most efficient way to get as many muscles as possible to work together, to get as good a leverage as possible to complete that lift with as heavy a weight as possible, which is an awesome thing to do. Bodybuilding is completely and utterly different. You're not thinking about how to get the weight from point A to point B, because if you lift like that, let's go back to my early 20s, okay? I was bouncing around between different large and then sort of underground public gyms, looking for the right ones with the right atmosphere where I could watch huge people lift and see what they do and see what I could pick up. I noticed that by that time I was already over 200 pounds. I was always very strong, and I was looking pretty good and stuff, and so I'd go into these gyms and I would find like a professional bodybuilder and I would watch what they're doing. And I'm sure it annoyed them because I would line up next to them and I would get the same weights that they're using and I would wait for them to do a set and then I would do a set with the same weight, okay? Because they were way bigger and thicker than me, and it was amusing to me how somehow I could lift the weights that they could lift. Well, it was another decade later, after that probably, when I finally came to understand bodybuilding and mind-muscle connection. And it ignited a whole passion in me for bodybuilding like I'd never had before. Because primarily I've always enjoyed just walking up and trying to pick up something really heavy. That's what just comes natural. That's what's fun. It feeds your ego. It's a rush. It's, I'm good at it. That just came naturally. But when I started to really understand what bodybuilding is, how most of the tension in the muscle, in other words, you could have two people do the same exercise, like for the same amount of sets and the same amount of reps, and yet the bodybuilder's muscles would have went through way more torment because he or she made them go through way more torment by the way they were adding pressure, adding tension, making it harder than it is instead of easier. So yes, oftentimes, it looks like, why is that big bodybuilder lifting that weight? I can lift that weight, that's not heavy. But you're not realizing that the mind-muscle connection, how hard that person is focusing in their mind and blocking out all distractions and just focusing on the one muscle that they're aiming for with that exercise, and how much tension they can hold in that muscle the whole time they're doing it. They don't care about what it looks like to somebody else. It doesn't matter, because that's a distraction. You don't even have a good mind-muscle connection if you're worried about what so-and-so thinks about how you look lifting that not so heavy weight. You see what I'm saying? So I learned this training by myself. I learned finally, about 3-4 years ago, how to truly bodybuild, because I didn't have anybody watching me, so I didn't have to worry about how silly it looked. And I dropped the weights way down, and I learned about volume and mind-muscle connection and making each rep count with your mind and your body and your spirit all being together. I would literally go around my little dungeon here and get anything that could be a distraction during my workout taken care of beforehand, so that when I'm doing those sets and those reps and I was teaching myself mind-muscle connection, there would be as few distractions in life as possible. So I could really get as close to 100% of my mind focused on 100% of those reps and making the tension on that muscle higher to get more growth, to get more development. Not to impress somebody with what kind of weights you can throw around. That's a completely different activity, which I love for other reasons. So it's one of those things where until you've experienced it at a higher level, you don't know what you're missing. It's like going through life hearing about love and thinking you know what love is, and then one day you really fall in love with somebody who really loves you, and it's like for the first time you really realize what love really is. Well, this is like that. When you're missing that experience of what it really means to have an intense mind-muscle connection and be able to control which muscle you're using and actually flex it harder and squeeze it and stretch it harder during a set, until you've really experienced what real bodybuilding really is. And to me, that's what real bodybuilding is. That's what makes it different from all the other weightlifting type sports, is what you don't see happening, okay? And until you've experienced that, you don't know what you're missing. You may think you know about mind-muscle connection. Obviously, if you can even move your muscle, you have some kind of a mind-muscle connection. But I'm talking about a whole higher level of it here. And until I experienced it myself, I didn't know that I didn't know what mind-muscle connection really was. Because I had started out from the other spectrum of things, lifting heavy things, letting my body find a way to get a heavy-ass weight from point A to point B. And that is a completely different kind of training that gets you completely different results, what that teaches your body. So, I'm trying to think if I have any other good... about 3-4 years ago when I figured this out, I went from a body that I hadn't been able to improve on very much for, I don't know, at least 5 years, to a whole new stage of growth and development. Okay? Because I don't even believe in this genetic ceiling that people reach, because you can put new satellite cells and nucleuses in your muscles and change your genetics. So there's actually no such thing. But I do recognize from experience that, of course, the more advanced you get, the more challenging it gets to figure out a way to advance further, right? Well, this took it to a whole new level for me. So I needed to make this video to help you guys realize, watching my Nether by the Day workouts to see what the workouts are, that's one thing. And I will continue to do that because I believe in showing you that I actually do the work. That's how I build the muscles, is, by actually doing the work. So I'm willing to show you that moment by moment and sweat and bleed with you. But also I want you to understand that there's a lot going on there with these bodybuilding style workouts where I'm using these lighter weights. There's a lot more going on than meets the eye, okay? And any good bodybuilder who's being honest if you pick their brain about this, they're gonna tell you something similar, that yes, What you don't see, the mind-muscle connection, the way you're controlling the weight, the way you're using the weight to train the muscle instead of just using the muscle to move the weight. You see the difference there? When it comes to strongman or powerlifting or weightlifting or whatever, or sports for that matter, you just dynamically use energy to get this thing from point A to point B. That's what you're doing. With bodybuilding, it's almost the opposite, because you're not using your muscles to move a weight. You're using a weight to train your muscles. I hope that gives you an inroad into the kind of wisdom or the kind of point I'm trying to make here, guys. That's all the human English words I can come up with to try to explain what I'm basically saying, but just suffice it to say, bodybuilding is really more about the mind-muscle connection and what you don't see happening as the bodybuilder is lifting. Okay, it's a lot more about that than any other form of weightlifting. It's deceptive. What you see is not necessarily what you get, because with the other sports that involve weightlifting, again, it's all about how much weight can I move. I'm a big strong guy, let me see if I can move this weight. Well, bodybuilding, it's totally different. So that's why, you see me go from a 1,500 pound rack pull one day, and then I'm in here doing sets with like 150 pounds on deadlifts with stiff legs, doing like 20 sets. And it's actually challenging because the way I'm doing it, I'm focusing on particular muscles and I'm hitting them a certain way. And again, it's what you don't see that's making it harder than it looks, okay? So just know, guys, that you could take two people that are twins, genetic twins, and you could put them on the same exact program of lifting. They're going to do all the same exercises on all the same days. They're going to eat all the same things. They're going to do all the same reps and sets, blah, 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 right? If one of them, you could install a program in their mind to where they would understand mind-muscle connection the way an experienced bodybuilder does, and the other one didn't get that program, they would end up, after they'd finished this entire lifting program, they'd end up looking entirely different. One guy would be way more built than the other. They'd both be functional and strong, but one of them would be a lot more muscular. The one who punished and trained the muscles with mind-muscle connection, instead of just lifting and moving the weight the easy way, okay? All right, enough said. Hit me with your questions, thoughts, responses. Is this clicking? Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope so. Just know that, when you're watching me do these workouts Nether by the day, if you wonder sometimes why that, that looks easy or that looks light, feel free to ask me a question what I'm really doing, because no doubt there's a technique being involved that's making it more challenging than it looks like, okay? And you're going to want to know these techniques too. There's a lot of little tricks here that you just can't see when you just watch the guy move the weight, okay? All right, enough said. Very important subject, because it's an unseen thing. Like, you can look right at it day in and day out and not recognize the difference between the way that bodybuilder is lifting that same weight versus the way that weightlifter is lifting that same weight, and what results the different versions of that are going to get. It's those unseen key factors, right? All right. I love you guys. Let me know what you think, Jedis. Over and out for now.